The influences you are unaware of affect you much more than the ones you know are there. And if there's any psychological study that has 100% influenced you, both with and without your awareness, it's the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment. The study claims that developing a specific trait early in life can have a huge impact on your future success. And that claim has been repeated so much over the past 50 years that people accept it without question. But that certainty isn't so certain anymore, with even the study's author quietly admitting that his conclusion might be completely wrong. But that doesn't mean the study is meaningless. Stick with me, and I'll show you the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment does prove something, but it's completely different than what you think. Quick recap of the experiment if you're not familiar. In 1972, Stanford researchers wanted to see under what circumstances 3 to 5-year-old kids could best delay eating their snack of choice, which was either a marshmallow or a pretzel stick. In one of their experiments, one group of kids was given a Slinky to play with, another was told to think of something fun to distract them, and a third group was told nothing. Kids who were able to avoid indulging in their treat for 15 minutes were given 2 marshmallows or 2 pretzel sticks instead of 1. In not so shocking news, the average kid in the group that was told nothing, not even that waiting would produce more reward, could barely wait a minute. The average Slinky kid was able to wait just under 9 minutes, and the average Thinky kid was able to wait just over 12. Now, that would have been that, but researchers followed up with the kids 18 years later in 1990 and made an unexpected discovery. The longer the preschoolers had been able to wait for their goodies, the higher their SAT scores. And the good news didn't end there. Later studies showed that the same group of preschoolers had higher self-worth, better ability to cope with stress, and even weighed slightly less than their impatient counterparts. Given that science had now shown that this one weird trick could permanently alter the trajectory of your kid's life, and the fact that no one was immune to that style of thinking yet, the study exploded into the popular consciousness. Even today, you can buy t-shirts joking about it. Ray Dalio says the test can predict if you'll become rich, and Warren Buffett uses it to explain value investing. BoJack Horseman had a take on it.
Thanks.
That was for the child.
Oh, should have specified.
And Sesame Street, the greatest stand-in TV parent of the 20th century, let kids know the shameful consequences of failing it.
Now that you're a member of the Cookie Connoisseurs Club, you've got to control yourself.
Cookie!
Cookie Monster?
Yeah.
You're hereby expelled from the Cookie Connoisseurs Club.
Expelled?
What's truly fascinating is that the benefits of delayed gratification have been so pumped into American consciousness that students' willingness to wait for a reward is still going up, despite decreasing attention spans. The average wait time went up by about 2 minutes between the 1960s and 2010s. Moreover, whereas 30% of students waited for their 2 marshmallows in 1960, almost 40% did in follow-up studies in 1980, rising to about 60% in the 2000s. Anyway, so many students are quote-unquote passing the test today that researchers say it doesn't even predict success anymore. That is, if it ever did. No one disputes that the test was properly done and that it measures something. But note the size of the marshmallows. They weren't the big juicy ones you see in YouTube videos about the experiment, but rather were the small ones about the size of a pencil eraser. And the pretzels they offered? They were sticks, not even 1 inch long. So how much of a reward were these really? You could have no willpower at all and decide that a crumb-sized piece of dehydrated sugary rubber that tastes no different whether it's fresh or stale just wasn't appealing, especially if something else is distracting you. Even Walter Mischel, who conducted the experiment, pointed out as much, noting how many kids were so uninterested in their snack that they would simply put it in a bag, as if to say, quote, "Look at what I did and how proud mom is going to be." Which brings us to our second question. If kids weren't motivated by the size of their reward, might they have been seeking approval from parental figures or the researchers themselves? I mean, if I'm being honest with myself, that's why I desired to pass the version of the marshmallow test I was subjected to in 2nd grade. Our teacher would give us 2 Skittles if we were able to stay quiet for the 5 minutes between when we arrived in class and when class started, otherwise we got 1. Honestly, I didn't care for fruit candy, and I would even skip homes giving it out on Halloween. Despite that, I was always quiet because I was a good boy, and my 2 Skittles were proof from the teacher of that. Let's also not forget how much kids can shame each other for being outliers. No one ever said anything about the 1 Skittlers, but they definitely got looks, which were usually enough to keep them quiet next time to prove they were one of us. So, does this intuition hold up to scientific scrutiny? In September 2020, researchers from UC San Diego and Zhejiang Sci-Tech University decided to find out. Their study was similar to the original marshmallow test, but with stickers made available on top of a time dispenser, which, if left in place for 15 minutes, would automatically open the box. One group of preschoolers was told their teacher would find out how long they waited. Another group was told their classmates would find out, and a third group was told no one would find out. It turned out that almost twice the students who knew a peer would find out waited the full 15 minutes, a figure that doubled again when students were told a teacher would find out. The study results changed little when stickers were switched out for cookies. The same researchers made another surprising discovery when they tried to find out how sensitive preschoolers were to the amount of reward they could get for waiting. In their next experiment, they told one group of preschoolers that they would get 2 stickers or 2 cookies from the box for waiting 15 minutes. Or, if they couldn't wait that long, they could take 1 sticker or cookie and anonymously go back to the classroom. A second group had the same setup, except that waiting the full 15 minutes got them 4 stickers or 4 cookies. A third group was told the same as the first group, 2 rewards for waiting the full 15 minutes, and 1 if they couldn't wait that long. But quitting early would require them to ring a bell to bring a researcher back to the room to give it to them. What's fascinating here is that kids who could anonymously take their 1 reward now or 2 rewards later performed virtually the same in the sticker and cookie group. However, the desirability of the prize had a significant impact on the group offered 4 rewards instead of 1 for waiting the full test duration, with kids able to wait pretty well for stickers but not so well for cookies. But what shocked researchers was that there was almost no difference between the cookie and sticker group when they knew the experimenter would find out if they didn't make it to the end of the test. This was also shocking because the children didn't know the experimenter from before. The kids who waited weren't demonstrating Herculean self-control, they were responding to a context where an authority figure implied that a certain behavior was desirable. So, did Mischel consider any of this as a possibility? He might have at some point, but it took over 40 years for someone to ask him, and his response was interesting. Are some children who delay responding to authority? Could waiting be a sign of wanting to please an adult and not a proxy for innate willpower? Presumably, even little kids can glean what researchers want from them. Maybe, they might be responding to anything under the sun, but it's how they respond. The most interesting thing I think about the studies is not the correlations that the press picks up, but that the marshmallow studies became the basis for testing all kinds of adults and how adults deal with difficult emotions that are very hard to distance yourself from, like heartbreak or grief. Let me break that down for you. I have no idea, I don't care what you think the real reason was, but hey, I got a sweet book deal out of it. Yep, he indeed wrote a book about the study becoming the basis for testing adults and predicting how adults deal with difficult emotions, which he was actually promoting during the same interview he admitted to having no clue whether the study was testing for delayed gratification or not. But I guess he expected people to gloss over that, as several questions later when the interviewer asked, so, for adults and kids, self-control or the ability to delay gratification is like a muscle? You can choose to flex it or not? Mischel responded, yes, absolutely. That's a perfectly reasonable analogy. Hey, why kill the cash cow? Besides, saying what actually predicts kids' success is the desire to please authority figures would have sounded dystopian in the 1970s. After all, Stanley Milgram's infamous experiment showing that a surprisingly large number of people would shock someone to death if an authority figure told them to do so had come out several years before the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment was conducted, to say nothing of the fact that people were still a bit high off the hippie era in 1972, and obedience made you, like, a square man. If all that wasn't enough to convince you, the latest follow-up with the original preschoolers in 2020 provided the final nail in the coffin. By then, original study participants were in their late 40s, at which time there was absolutely no correlation between how long their preschooler selves waited for a marshmallow and their midlife socioeconomic standing. And why would there be? After all, high schoolers can still feel pressure from their parents and teachers to do well on things like SAT tests. But by the time you're an adult, unless you're in a cult or something, there really are no authority figures left in your life. Even worse, although the study purported to show a positive correlation between success and self-regulation skills developed by participants throughout their lives, the sample size was only 113, with a very weak positive correlation of 0.19, around the same correlation between the number of hours you spend reading books per week and the color shirt you're wearing. It's barely a step above astrology. But therein lies the staying power of beliefs. Despite delayed gratification not producing the claimed benefits, society has internalized it as a value. Of course kids are going to wait longer for their marshmallow in a culture that glorifies hustle and reveres self-discipline. They're raised to believe that this is the golden ticket to success, even though that belief is turning existence into some sort of liminal space where real life is perpetually postponed in favor of some idealized future. In that light, I see the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment as a cautionary tale about the power of context and perception. A small, stale marshmallow becomes the symbol of future success, not because of its inherent value, but because of the narrative built around it. And this narrative has been so compelling, so deeply ingrained in our psyche, that we've overlooked the possibility that maybe, just maybe, it's not about the marshmallow at all. What the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment really shows us is how profoundly we are influenced by the stories we tell ourselves about success, and that these stories, much like a tiny marshmallow, might not be as substantial as we once thought.
Good job, you made it to the end of my video. Here's your 2 marshmallows.